Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 903B, and today's date is February 25th, 2016, and the title of the episode is U.S. is now shipping a massive amount of arms to the Middle East. Now, before I get started, I just want to make an announcement. I just placed an interview with John Rappaport on the X22 Report Spotlight YouTube channel, so you can go right over to YouTube. Type in X22 Report Spotlight, bring you right over to the channel, and you can see the interview there. Or you can come over to the X22Report.com site. You can scroll down a little bit, look over to your right-hand side, you'll see the video there. Or you can go to NewsSentinel.com. Same thing. Scroll down a little bit, look over to your right-hand side, you'll see the video there. Let's get into the economic collapse, political and geopolitical news. Now, all over the corporate media, we see the battle between the FBI and Apple. And we discussed this many times in this report. And on its face, it seems like this has to do with this single business phone where the FBI just wants to get access so they can see the information, even though they kind of told the business where Farouk worked to change the password, which kind of messed everything up. And that leads you to believe that the FBI kind of did this on purpose because they're pushing other agendas. And what we're seeing right now is this is not the only reason why the FBI wants some type of backdoor or key to encryption. Because if they give it to one phone, they'll have the method of accessing everyone's phone. So what we're learning is that the FBI and the federal government, they have a far more comprehensive endgame in mind than just this one case. And we find that there are actually 12 other iPhones the FBI wants access in cases that have nothing to do with terrorism whatsoever. According to an Apple lawyer, these cases are spread all over the country. 4 in Illinois, 3 in New York, 2 in California, 2 in Ohio, 1 in Massachusetts. Now, what are they looking for on these phones? We don't know exactly. But we can see this is part of their scheme. They're trying to convince everyone that they want to keep you safe, that they need to have this access to your phone systems, that they don't want encryption. And we can see right now that this will not keep you safe. This will just allow the government to spy on you. And we can see right now that Apple is fighting this, and the FBI is still pushing. Yes, it does look like kind of a show here. And we know this is all part of the agenda because all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we'll most likely see legislation that encryption is not allowed anywhere. But if real terrorists wanted to pass messages back and forth, do you really think they're going to be doing it on an open system? A system that they don't trust. If there's real terrorist organization or a criminal organization, do you really think they're going to be doing it over Facebook, Twitter, they're going to use their iPhone or Android phone? Or do you think they're going to come up with methods that are encrypted, that they create on their own and use without the government knowing? They can use ciphers, they can use many different things. So all of this is a gigantic show for you to give up your rights. That's what this comes down to. So the question was asked to the FBI Director Comey. If Apple is forced to help unlock the iPhone used by the San Bernardino shooter, alleged shooter, the fake shooter, because we know it wasn't him, we know it was other tall white men, which are pretty much special forces who are used in this false flag event. What else can the government make private companies do? And the members of the House Intelligence Committee repeatedly asked Comey that question. If Apple is forced to help unlock the iPhone, what else can the government make private companies do? And the FBI director would not answer that question. And we know if they force Apple to do this, is going to lead to other companies doing the same thing, because now they have a case and they can say, okay, we did it to Apple. We can now do it to every single company. Now, very interestingly, a federal judge, which was appointed by Obama, ruled against people photographing police. He said, simply filming or photographing police does not qualify as free speech protected by the U.S. Constitution, unless accompanied by expressive conduct, such as a challenge or criticism. Now, Judge Mark Kearney of the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Pennsylvania, he's the one who said this. There was a case that was filed by Richard Fields and Amanda Geraci, who claimed police had unfairly retaliated against them for filming and photographing them. Geraci was filming an anti-fracking demonstration in Philadelphia in September of 2012 when an officer physically prevented her from filming an arrest. Fields, a Temple University student, was briefly detained in September of 2013 after snapping a photo of a group of police officers standing outside a residence. Now, what's very interesting about this is the courts have told us, and agencies have told us of the government, that if you're using your cell phone in public, you have no right to privacy, right? This is how they use the Stingray devices, and they say your communication is completely open. No, my communication is closed, and I'm talking to a private person. I don't have them on speaker. I'm not letting everyone listen. But they're trying to make that case. So if that is the case, then the public figure, the police officer, can be then photographed because he's out in public, working for the public, and he has no right to privacy. Now, the Supreme Court has already stated that it is a First Amendment protected right to film the police in the course of their official duties, while they're in public, as long as you don't interfere with their investigation. The Ninth Circuit has recognized the First Amendment right to film matters of public interest. And this was in a case, Fortis versus City of Seattle, back in 1995. Other circuits have similarly held the First Amendment protects an individual right to record police officers in the course of carrying out their duties. The filming of government officials engaged in their duties in public places, including police officers, are also covered by the First Amendment. And they're trying to convince us that you don't have that right. It's amazing what they're doing at this point, trying to convince the population that you don't have these rights. These rights are not yours. And since you don't have these rights, you don't have choices. And we know through the Common Core system they're trying to convince the next generation that their rights are actually privileges. But privileges can be taken away by the government. We're born with these rights. The government didn't give them to us. And this is why we need to support them every single day and challenge the government every single day to say, no, this is our right, and there's nothing you can do about it. You signed a contract with the people to abide by the Constitution and the rights of the people. That's why we elected you into government. You can be removed from government if you don't want to follow this contract. I don't think they understand this. Well, actually, I think they do. And we know they'll use force to keep their position. They'll lie, they'll cheat, they'll do whatever they have to. Now, out in France, we see farmers are very upset, and we're seeing a lot of these protests in many different areas of Europe. And we see French farmers, they've clashed with riot police once again in the western part of the country. Officers fired tear gas because the demonstrators were throwing eggs. Crowds carry banners saying Europe is killing its farmers. They're protesting because of the low prices of agricultural produce, which are being pressured downward by the glut of domestic supply resulting from the political sanctions against Russia. And we know throughout Europe, the farmers are feeling the pain of the sanctions. Now, out in Ukraine, things are really starting to get chaotic there. There are protesters that are protesting. They're having rallies in the Maidan Square. And basically what they want is they want Poroshenko to resign. They're demanding the immediate ouster of the Ukrainian cabinet and president, as well as the resignation of traitors and dissolution of the parliament. So we see that already there are problems within Ukraine. As we know, there's a puppet government that the United States placed in there. Now we understand why they're digging tunnels, so these elected officials, which aren't really elected, that were placed into power by the U.S. government, have the ability to escape just in case something happens. And now we see Poroshenko out there, and he is warning of a danger of a recent flare-up of violence in eastern Ukraine. And he's worried that this is going to develop into a full-scale conflict. Ukraine's eastern region is saying that he thinks it's breaking down. And the ceasefire is breaking down. And right now, he's seeing that there's a good prospect of the return to a full-scale military action on the east under the aggressor's systematic violations of the commitments made by Russia in the Minsk. And he says this is visible on their radar right now. I wonder what they're planning. Because, to get this war started, there's going to be a false flag. And they're going to blame it on the southeastern people. And Russia, of course. So we're going to have to sit back and watch this, because we can see this is coming anytime soon. We are now heading into spring. And once we get into spring, maybe the early summer, we'll most likely see some type of an offensive, unless the people rise up in the country and they actually have a real coup and they throw out the puppet government. So we'll have to watch that situation very carefully. The U.S. is out there saying that they're going to have to boost their presence because of what China is doing on the islands, where they're placing alleged missiles. They have jets now placed on the islands. And we can see already that the Pentagon is out there saying that we're going to have to bring in more advanced weapons into the area. We're going to be flying, sailing, operating wherever international law allows. And we're going to have to increase the military presence in this region. So they're using this as propaganda for their agenda to bring in more military assets and have budgets increased. We've seen this time and time again. And every time I see a black and white, fuzzy satellite image, it tells me it's propaganda right off the bat. The U.S. right now has expanded its drone operation in Africa by establishing a new base in Cameroon. And this base is going to be fully operational earlier in this month. And basically, it's going to be hosting about 4 Gray Eagle drones. So we see already the U.S. is setting up its military assets with drones. We see it in Sicily. We see it in Cameroon. We know in Djibouti they have a base there where they have drones. And they're putting all the pieces in place. Now, Washington right now is strongly condemning all attempts to obstruct the Libyan political process. Basically what they're saying is they don't like the elected government saying that they don't want a unity government, because the U.S. is trying to push a unity government in Libya. Why? Because that unity government will then invite the forces into Libya to basically get rid of all those people that are against the puppet regime and to get rid of that government in Tripoli. So we know that France is already inside of Libya. They have boots on the ground. We know the U.S. already has special forces inside Libya, and they're waging their own private little war inside of Libya. And we see already that the Libyan army, controlled by the puppet government, they're calling for Western intervention inside of Libya. Right now, we know President Obama is meeting with his staff and other coalition forces to talk about what they should do in Libya. Should they bring ground troops into Libya? Even though the corporate media is continually broadcasting that no ground troops will be heading to Libya, well, we know the opposite is going to happen. Right now, Turkey has been trying to prove that the bombing in Ankara was done by Syrian Kurds, and guess what? There is no evidence whatsoever. They can't put it together, and it's continually showing that it wasn't the Syrian Kurds. But they want it to be the Syrian Kurds because they want to show that they were attacked. But the investigation is showing it doesn't fit. Now, Turkey, the prime minister there, is out there saying that the ceasefire agreed between Syria's warring parties was only valid inside Syria and is not binding for Turkey. If Turkey's national security is threatened, it doesn't apply to Turkey. So you know what that means. That means if someone bombs, someone shoots a missile into Turkey, guess what? All bets are off. And we saw Erdogan do this back in 2013. He had soldiers cross from Turkey into Syria, and they fired a missile from Syria into Turkey, and Erdogan was out there blaming Syria for this. The only problem, it was on Twitter and on YouTube showing that it was a complete false flag. And Erdogan took the next step of banning YouTube and Twitter so it couldn't be shown, but it was still out there. And that is a false flag. So the Syrian opposition right now is ready to maintain a 2-week ceasefire. For 2 weeks. Lavrov is warning the U.S. about undermining the Syrian peace ceasefire deal. And they have no idea what they're talking about, this plan B. They're saying there is no plan B. There will be no partitioning of Syria whatsoever. Now, the biggest worry for Russia right now, because there's a lot of talk about this, is the attempt to create a buffer zone. We know troops are on the Turkish border. We know a wall was built. Jay Johnson from the U.S. was over there, helping them put up balloons, surveillance equipment, spending billions of dollars over there. Of course, we can't keep our borders safe, but over there they can seal them off, and they can spend money, and they have the technology to set up a border that no one can cross except who they want. Here in the U.S., they say it's impossible. It's amazing. But we can see right now is they're concerned about this because they see what's going on. John Kerry is in front of the Senate panel today, and he is saying that we're going to need about 15,000 to 30,000 ground troops to maintain a safe zone. And he wants to know, are we ready to authorize that? So they already have plans in motion. And you can see they're going to try to get authorization to do this. Now, if they don't get authorization to do this, most likely they'll just have Turkey covertly with the Islamic State and others create this type of safe zone. Or maybe they'll have the Kurds help out. Now, of course, they won't call them the Islamic State. They'll say it's the rebels and whatnot, but we know it's all the same terrorist groups. Now, we see the U.S. right now is shipping in a huge amount of arms into the Kurdish areas. Now, we don't know exactly where the 41,000 grenades and the 60,000 anti-tank rounds, along with 1,000 unguided missiles, are going. Oh, let me include the 5 million rounds of ammunition for heavy machine guns and 150 U.S. vehicles. They're all being brought up to this area, and we know what the U.S. does. They drop them off in the area, and we know it goes to the terrorist groups. And this is exactly what is happening out in that area. They're resupplying their proxy armies. Now, the U.S. government is in talks with the other Arab states on ground forces. They're discussing it with United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Oman, Jordan, concerning whether they would lend their ground troops to help fight the Islamic State, which we know that's not who they're fighting. So Kerry said, we are engaged in discussions, and we're talking about how many troops they can supply us. Now, this is already done. The plan was already created. It's already in motion. They're just waiting for the green light. And we can see already what's happening. The U.S. Intelligence Director, Clapper, he is out there, and he is saying that Syria has not declared all the elements of its chemical weapons program to the Chemical Weapons Convention. Despite the creation of these specialized teams and months of work by the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, guess what? Chemical weapons remain in Syria. And he is accusing the government of using them. So they're going down the same exact path once again. Now, we know the U.S. does not want the ceasefire to work out. We see the Pentagon, the CIA, they're preparing for Russia to break the ceasefire in Syria. They think Russia's not going to honor the ceasefire. Well, this tells us already that the U.S. is going to break it, and they're going to blame it on Russia. Russia came up with the ceasefire. Why in the world would they want to break it at this point? And whatever the government tells us, whatever the agencies tell us, it is always the opposite. They are liars. They just continually put one lie on top of another lie on top of another lie. And we can see already, if they're preparing for Russia, and I have my hands up with quotes, to break the ceasefire, we know they're getting prepared to do this. We know they're getting ready to go into Syria somehow, some way. Now, do their plans always work out? No. This is why they continually make a plan. They put it forth. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. They regroup, they make another plan. But the goal is always the same. The goal is they want Syria. The goal is they want Assad out. The goal is they want a pipeline. The goal is they want the dollar on the natural resources. The goal is they want to get into Iran. The goal is they need to continually prop up the petrodollar by spreading it and expanding it. And if this doesn't work, the goal is to create war any way they possibly can. And this is why everyone needs to be prepared, because we're having this collapse, and all of this is intertwined. It's not two separate things that are going on here. And this is why you need to be prepared. Let's say there isn't a war. Let's say they can't get that off the ground. The collapse is still going to happen, no matter what. They're going to use the war to cover up the collapse. But we're still going to have major problems, no matter what. And this is why you need to be prepared. This is why you need your food. This is why you need your water. This is why you need your medical supplies. You need gold, silver, and a weapon to protect yourself. And you have to have the ability to get up and to move to a different area if necessary. If you haven't started, I would start now. You can go to lifereliance.com. They have bug out bags, seeds, water filtration system. They can customize your orders. If you're doing and preparing all along, continue to do it. The system is coming down, and it's just a matter of time. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.